Welcome and thank you for joining me today. I'm Hardik Chera, Head of Product at Tellius. Tellius is a search and AI powered analytics platform that enables every user to get quick answers from their business data. Think Google for your business data. A search driven interface not only lets you ask any question of your data, but it also automatically surfaces hidden insights using embedded machine learning algorithms. So today I'm going to actually walk you through a day in a life of a salesperson. How would a salesperson at a particular company use Tellius in his day-to-day life? So once the salesperson logs into Tellius, he would see on the homepage a completely customized and personalized experience. For example, we try to understand and learn the user persona. We try to understand his role. We understand his daily activities, things he does on the platform. We also see what his peers are doing. We also see what's trending in the organization, and come up with this homepage view where we always recommend some content that we think he might be interested in. For example, when I, as a salesperson, Joe logs in, I would see that there are some dashboards that might need my attention, or things that maybe I should be looking at. For example, there's a sales overview dashboard, return prediction, or some other analytics around the quantity that I'm shipping by country. So today I'm going to start my demo here by doing what I do on a daily basis, which is look at my sales overview dashboard, which Tellius already knew about. So it's recommending me to look at the sales overview dashboard. So let's open up this dashboard and see what insights I have in place. So as the global head of sales for my company, I visit my sales dashboard on a daily basis. This dashboard was put together by a group of analysts who work for me. Here I can see and get a view of my overall revenue, my operational cost, the profit that I'm making, etc., etc. I can also see how things actually break down by different states. I can see that there are a few states that are doing better than the others. I also can see how my sales have been doing over time. So I can see there's a trend that I definitely see, and the consumer segment is actually picking up. So that's a pretty good news for me. I can see that some products are pretty expensive to ship to certain regions. For example, in the Oceania region, I see that shipping chairs is costing a lot, and when it comes to machines, the shipping is something that I need to take care of in the East region. So there are these things that I can now work on, with my suppliers to figure out how can I optimize the shipping cost as well. The other view that I can take a look at is, there are some products that are costing a lot on the shipping, but also the sales for these products are actually not doing as good as I would want. So I can actually zoom down and then see what are those products that are causing those problems. I would see that there is some kind of a chair that's pretty costly to ship, but it's also not getting me enough revenue. If you see, the profit is minus 275 versus the shipping cost is 502. So what I can actually do is now optimize the inventory, figure out if I can have a better supply chain for these chairs, or also altogether stop selling this particular chair in a particular region that I could see in this adjacent chart here. So there are some of these things I can directly do on the dashboard in terms of sales, the revenue, the profit, etc. I can see in this particular view that I'm doing most of my sales in United States, but I can further drill down to figure out how am I doing by different states. How am I doing by particular cities, for example? So all of those interactivity and next level of questions that I need to understand what my business is today, I can actually do with the help of the dashboard. I think there's another view where I can also get a detailed level of information. Maybe this is something that I'm interested in. I can actually download it and send it to the other people on my team. One of the other things that I typically do is get a Monday morning briefing on such kind of reports directly to my inbox. So what I would actually do is I would set up something like a notification. So every Monday morning, I'm actually notified about this particular report. And whenever revenue or profit goes down, I'm actually alerted automatically at that point. So this is a pretty good view to understand, how my business is running on a day-to-day basis. What's my revenue, what's my profit, what's my cost, how I can figure out some of the problem areas. But it really doesn't let me ask ad hoc questions on the fly. For example, I want to understand the quantity that I'm selling, and there is no way I can do it on the dashboard. I can maybe ping my analyst and he can create a report for me. But what if I want to do it myself, right? So how would I do that? So I'm going to go to search, where I can actually ask questions on the fly. So I think dashboard view is good, but I don't have time to wait for IT or analysts to give me some quick answers to the questions that I have right now. I don't want them to develop new reports and dashboards, but I just want to do it myself. So once I'm here in search, I can ask questions in plain English, and I think the Tellius platform, what it does, it naturally guides me through the entire experience. So, for example, I just want to know what's my profit, right? So I'm going to say, show me my sum of profit. So that's going to tell me what's my profit for the entire business at this point. Let's say I also want to see how my profit is broken down by different categories of product that I sell. So at this point, I'm just going to say, hey, show me my sum of profit by categories, for example. So at that point, I can see that most of my profit is coming from the technology business versus some other business. And then again, I think with search, I can still ask the deeper questions. Say, can you drill down into technology and tell me what are the next level of subcategories that I sell? And I see that copiers is the one that's the most profitable for me. And then I want to know which kind of copiers are most profitable. So I can drill down further to see that this one particular copier where I'm making the most money versus, there's this sharp fax machine, which is actually causing negative profit or loss to my business. So the search itself is also interactive as well. I can do some other things. For example, I want to see profit across these three categories, but also see the trend, how it's trending month by month or quarter by quarter. So I'm just going to say, show me the profit quarterly, which means it's actually going to show me how my profit has been trending over time or so. I can also put in some filters. For example, show me the profit only for the last 5 years, which is what I really care about. So I'm going to say do it for the last 5 years, and I see it's putting actually a filter for the last 5 years of profit or so. I can also do things like show me profit by, let's say, different countries that I sell to, but I only want to see for my technology products. So I can just say for technology at that point, and it's going to apply a filter for technology. As you can also see here that we just set technology, which was a value for a particular attribute in the data set, but Tellius automatically recognized that we were talking about category, equal to technology. The same thing happened when we were doing the analysis quarter by quarter. There was no sense of quarter in the data set. There was just some dates, but Tellius automatically did the aggregation at a quarterly level, understanding that that's what the user wants to do. Another example here, what most of the business users would want to do at this point is, you're definitely showing me something broken down by country and only for technology, but how does it compare to the furniture business of the house? So at this point, I'm going to just say technology compared to furniture, and then I will see side-by-side analysis that technology is doing pretty good in China, but if there are some other regions where I see New Zealand where furniture is doing better than technology. So that would actually give me a good view of how different regions are performing. But at this point, let's say I just want to see what are my most profitable products. What are the top 5 products, for example, which are most profitable to me and my business at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'll just say, show me the top 5 profit by, let's say, product name. Right, so that's going to give me a result which will tell me, hey, this particular copier from Canon is the one that's generating the most revenue for me. I can also do the same thing for bottom products. So I want to see which are the products which are not doing really good or where I'm losing money. Then I would see that there's this electric binding system which is actually causing a huge loss to my business. So that way I can actually get a quick view without, again, asking an analyst to do all of these kind of analysis, which is also not very easy to do on a dashboard level or so. The other thing which I think also makes sense for me to talk about is the next generation of search that we are working on, which is currently in beta mode. So whatever search that we saw here was more of a guided search. So at each point, we are guiding the user that, hey, here are the selections that you can make, so that he knows what to type or he knows what to ask, and it's more of a guided and assisted mode. For example, here we'll say show and then select an aggregation, for example, average. The next thing is, average discount. So we're actually recommending him each and every step what you should do. So now you want to see discount by different categories. For example, countries. I want to see how much am I discounting on an average by different country, and then he can keep on building his search with recommendations or so. But the other thing that we have started working on, and it's in the beta mode right now, is the natural search. So what does that really mean? People can actually now type questions in plain English. For example, hey Tellius, can you tell me or can you show me what's my revenue or what's my profit by different country, etc., etc. Right? So I'll just show one of these examples and not dive too much deeper into it. But let's see. I'm going to ask Tellius, say what's the sum of quantity, and then also sold by country. So now I'm actually asking these things in plain English. I didn't have any guided approach that I have to take. I can type any of these things in plain English and Tellius will still understand what we were asking and give the appropriate output for that one. So in the first two part of the videos, we saw that how as a sales exec, I can actually see my view of the business, something that I look at on a daily basis, the things that I care about, my business metrics, profit, sales, by regions, by products, by categories. I'm trying to figure out how to optimize my different costs, see where we are making money or losing money. And when I have some questions on the fly, some ad hoc questions, I can go to search and then start asking for questions on the fly without actually reaching out to analysts to create new reports. So it's pretty flexible in terms of the things that I can do. But again, all of this still tells me the state of my business as it is right now. Like, hey, what's going on? But I really don't know things that I'm not asked, things that I don't even know how to ask. And that's where Tellius has come up with this Genius Insights Engine, which actually looks at the entire data set, the entire view of my business, and figures out if there is something that I should, take a look at. Things that I should care about, or things that are not the normal, not the usual, things that might have gone up or lower, things that I care about, are there any patterns that have emerged, and take a look at it and maybe take action on those things. So let me see how that can be useful to me and my business. So for example, I really care about the sales and also the categories, but more specifically the subcategories that I sell. For example, the copiers that I was mentioning earlier in the demo. So I'm going to ask the same query again. Here I'll just switch back to the guided mode. I'm just going to say show me sum of sales by my subcategories, right? At this point, I know that copiers is one of the subcategories that's doing really well, but hey, can you also find some other interesting insights which are kind of related to this one? That's what I'll say. Hey, Genius Insight, can you just discover some insights for me? So at this point, Tellius is running a few different machine learning algorithms behind the scenes, and depending on the size of the data, it could take from seconds to minutes. But here you saw that the insights came up pretty quickly in a matter of a few seconds or so. So I'm going to take a look at what insights Tellius has to offer at this point. So you saw that Tellius discovered some 20 insights going through all of the different data points that I had. It did some 74 different combinations of charts and measures and attributes and analyzed that information in 4 seconds. So what Tellius is telling me first is, hey, there are some kind of 10 anomalies in your data set. And anomalies here means something that stands out, something that I should take a look at or pay attention to. So it's telling me that sales are high for subcategory copiers, phones, bookcases, chairs, and appliances, which is good to know. I mean, I obviously know copiers is the best thing that my business is selling right now, but I also wanted to see some other things which it's actually telling me right out of the bat. It's also telling me that I'm actually highly discounting my subcategory binders, which I wasn't aware that my sales team is actually doing that activities, because if you see all of my other products or the subcategories of products have a pretty low average discount versus the binders. So that's something that I'm going to take a note of. I can also see that total sales is high in United States, something which I kind of know of, and then I can also see some of the trends in the other states or so. It's also telling me that my sales have been high for particular individuals, which means I'm selling a lot of these products to these three individuals, which I should make a note of, and I have to also make sure that our CSM team is taking good care of them. And I can also use it in a different way, where I can say, hey sales guys, what are we doing about these three customers that are at the bottom, and can you take a look at those guys as well? And then we have some other analysis also. So as you can see, there are pretty interesting things that came up here, and things that I also didn't even ask for, but Tellius automatically figured out, hey, that basically these are the things that you should be looking at. It also tells me that I'm selling a lot of storage overall, so maybe those are the things which I need to make sure that our supply chain department understands, that that's where the most of the demand is coming from. Chairs, I think we already saw in one of the analysis, where chairs is actually costing us a lot to ship. So maybe we need to optimize the cost on the chairs also. So these anomalies are really useful because they help me pinpoint things which I would have not thought of, or I didn't even get to. But this is a quick button to automatically generate these kind of interesting insights for any business user. The other kind of insights that are generated are correlations. How are some of the variables or metrics correlated to each other? For example, the shipping cost and the sales go high hand in hand whenever the subcategory is fasteners first. So there's something to do with this, where more volume means more sales, but also more shipping cost. And there are some of the other things that chairs we already saw, that as the quantity of the chair goes high, the shipping cost also increases exponentially. So that is something which is good to know of, and it's good that Tellius is telling me all of these things out of the box. So just as a summary, these are some interesting insights that Tellius automatically figured out for me. Maybe I would have, stumbled upon them, or maybe my analysts would have spent, thousands of hours discovering these kind of insights. But it's a pretty good feature that Tellius is actually telling me all of these things automatically without me going and explicitly asking, hey, what's wrong in my business? Or can you tell me some of the interesting things that are happening in my business so that I can take some kind of action? So that's a pretty cool thing. The next thing that I actually wanted to focus on is some richer and deeper insights. So this is the first level of insights where, hey, I had some dashboards, I had some search. Can you also tell me something more interesting than what I'm searching? But the next level of insights is where I can ask very specific questions to Tellius. So for example, here I do see that chairs is costing a lot to ship. I want to really know what's driving that behavior. So for example, hey Tellius, can you tell me what drives the subcategory chairs? So what's driving the shipping cost for these kind of chairs? Or in general, what drives the top percent of shipping cost? Or some other things like what drives top percent shipping cost when subcategory is a chair? Or I can ask my own question. For example, hey, can you tell me what's driving my sales? For example, I can actually put in those kind of questions, like what's driving my top 10% profit, right? So I can actually ask those kind of questions, where Tellius will do the investigation and try to figure out, hey, what are those factors that really drive profit for you? So I'm actually going to start with a very simple question here, which was, I know that copiers is something which is pretty high selling item for me. It's generating a good amount of revenue. I just want to understand, what's driving the subcategory copiers sale. Why am I so successful with copiers? So I'm going to ask that question here, and let's see what Tellius comes back with. So at this point, Tellius is actually running a lot of different machine learning algorithms. It's trying to figure out, what are those interesting things that I have inside my data set, which actually will tell me a story, which is, hey, these are the things that actually make your copier sales happen. And then these are the different kind of combinations of, categories or segments or other things that you should be selling to understand how to increase the sales of copiers, or how to replicate the same thing across different categories or so. So we already saw that, Genius Engine has discovered some insights for you. So we are going to take a look at what we have in store here. So at this point, Tellius has figured out for us, what are the things in our data set or in my business which actually affect the subcategory sales the most. For example, orders markets, or the markets that we sell into, the mode that people use typically to ship the product, the segment of customers that are buying, different products, or the order priority that they place on a particular order is the one that actually affects, what category that they kind of select. For example, I can see that the sales for my subcategory is 2.3 times higher than the average when someone from a corporate segment uses standard class and a medium kind of order priority outside of the US and European market. So that's when I actually make most of the sales for a particular subcategory, which is copiers. There are some other segments that also we discovered using Tellius. It automatically said that whenever I'm selling to my home office customers and I'm using my standard class and medium priority of shipping to particular European customers, I am able to sell 2 times or 2.2 times more of these kind of copiers. So it's actually intelligently understanding which are those kind of factors that really affect my copier sales, and then tell me what I should be doing in order to increase the sales of copiers by changing or varying different parameters in different kind of settings or so. So that was a good way to see, what's driving the sales of copiers. But let's say if I want to ask, what's driving my returns, because I see a big uptick in returns and I want to see what's driving the returns, I can actually do it independently. So I can just say, hey, go to my discoveries. I want to create a new insight where I would say what drives, for example, the product return equal to yes. I can also add some filters that I just want to see returns for North America, or I want to select or remove some features. For example, I don't want the customer segment as one part of the analysis. I can do all of those things and then just say create, and I'll get a similar kind of analysis. So that's a good way to understand what's driving some kind of behavior. The other thing which people are mostly interested in, and particularly business users, is, hey, why did my sales go down? What's affecting my sales, or what's affecting my profit or revenue? How can I improve it? For that, we have another category of Genius Insights, which we say trend drivers, where I would say, for my different order dates, investigate this change in the total sales that I'm making. So I want to see how my sales change, for example, this quarter, or how it was in the last quarter versus this quarter. So I can select different time periods, and what Tellius will do at this point is do the comparisons of what the sales was in the previous quarter, what it is in this quarter, and then also see what was driving those kind of chains, so that I can understand what I can do better or improve or keep on doing if it's a good thing to do. So here I'm just going to say create Genius Insights, and it's going to run an insight for me and figure out all of those things. So I already have pre-created one of these insights. So I'm just going to see where I have that, what drove change in sales. So again, the question that we asked here was what's driving change in sales between Jan 2011 to December 2011. So basically change between 2011 and 22. So again, Tellius analyzed all of the different data points for this particular time filter and analyzed 25 different segments of data in 22 seconds. So what do we see here? So it's telling me that my sales at an overall level increased by 13%, and this is the number that was the increase between these two time periods, 2011 and 2012. And then it's actually breaking it down segment by segment. So the first segment that I'm seeing here, which is on the right hand side, so that's the biggest change or the biggest uptick that I see. So whenever I do not sell in US, or whenever I'm selling outside of US, and the category is appliances, and I'm selling it with a high priority, so those are the kind of products, or the combination of products and different attributes of a business where I'm doing the most, where I see the most uptick in the sales in the year 11 to 12. Similarly, there are some other segments that I will actually see here. So I see when I'm not selling appliances copiers, but I'm using the other categories for ship mode and region, I see some other uptick. What I'm really interested in seeing, why did sales go down for these kind of different segments. So for example, for this segment, I see whenever I was selling phones to non-consumers in North Asia, my sales actually went down. So that means I need to focus on consumers in Asia and not sell to non-consumers. So these are some of the interesting insights that actually can tell me what's driving the change in a particular metric over time and what I can do about it. So these kind of insights actually help drive some change in the business. For example, not selling phones in North Asia to the non-consumers is a pretty big business decision, and I'm actually having a data point in front of me right now which is telling me that the sales dropped. So either I can do something on the marketing side to figure out if I can campaign to the non-consumers, or I focus only on consumers in North Asia when I'm selling my phone. So I can actually make some data-driven decisions after I get these kind of insights, which are not typically easy to get if you just have some dashboards or such tools. I think the other last part of the platform that I really wanted to cover was, the predictive analytics piece, where people can actually create machine learning models in a single click, something which the business users or an analyst would actually love to use because they don't have to write any code to develop these kind of models. So the first two or three parts of the platform that we saw was, a search-driven interface, some dashboarding capabilities, which a lot of users still desire. But then the last part that we were just covering was the Genius Insights, where the first part is where Tellius will automatically uncover some insights for you, and the second part is where you ask specific questions like, hey, what's driving the change in a metric, or what are the things that actually relate to a particular metric, and how I can do something about it to improve my business outcomes. The final piece is the prediction, which is where I want to create some machine learning models on the fly. For example, I would say, hey, I just want to predict my profit, or I just want to predict if my product is going to be returned or not. So the first thing that the tool does is it tells you out of all of your orders, X amount of orders have been returned and Y amount have not been returned. So at this point I would just say, hey, can you create a return machine learning model for me, and then train it for me and tell me how I can use this model against a new incoming batch of orders, so that I can be well prepared for the orders, or maybe I can do something proactively so that those orders are not returned to me. So at this point I will just say predict, which is when Tellius will actually run a lot of different machine learning algorithms for me behind the scenes and create a kind of a view where I would see a list of all of the machine learning algorithms that were trained, tested, and available for me to use. So I already did this beforehand, so I'm just going to go to the leaderboard, where I would see for the return variable that we wanted to predict, here are the 5 different machine learning algorithms that Tellius actually ran behind the scenes, and what are the evaluation metrics that came up for each of those models, which will tell you how accurate the model is, and the other things that typically data scientists would actually try to tune and optimize. So the beauty here is Tellius has automatically trained these models for you, and as a business analyst, you can directly pick those models and use them for predictions. And you can do it in a couple of different ways. So I'm going to walk you through how you would actually put those things to use. So one of the first things to do is you can just say apply on this model that has been created. So what it really does is it will tell you can pick up any incoming data set in your environment in the Tellius platform, and you can say there are this new set of orders that came in, and now I want to see for each of these orders, will they be returned or not? Right, so that's the simplest thing which an analyst would typically do. I have a new bunch of orders coming in. I have this predictive model that has been built for returns, and I just want to predict if these orders are going to be returned or not. So that's one of the first things that you can do, and I've already done that on the platform. The other thing that you can also do is you can expose this model via API. So what we also allow is building third-party applications. So we expose the machine learning model API. So now any third-party platform can send it a request with all of the required parameters, and they get a response which says, the order is going to be returned, yes or no, those kind of things, right? So they can actually build some third-party application also. So I'll just give a quick overview on the dashboard that I built using the prediction. So we had a new bunch of incoming orders, and for each orders, I tried to predict if those orders will be returned or not. And then you could see that there's a return column with labeled no and yes for each of those orders. So I also tried to apply the trend on those previous orders to see, how accurate were we on, predicting if those orders were actually returned or not, and what's the mix of those things. So there are different ways in which you can use the analysis of the predictive models in a very easy format. The beauty is that, instead of also doing automated machine learning, if you have someone who's more skilled in data science but doesn't want to write, line of code but wants to fine tune the models, they can go with the point and click approach, where I would say, what's the kind of machine learning algorithm I want to use. For example, classification in this case, I would select what variable I want to train the model on, which is returned again. In this case, I can decide what features I want to use for training. Maybe I don't want to use order ID, or I don't want to use the region that I'm selling to. I don't want to use the discount quantity, or so I can exclude certain things from the training. Then I can say, hey, can you use the decision tree classifier? Can you use logistic regression? Can you use random forest classifier? Hey, but by the way, I also have some Python code that I've written in. So can I actually bring that Python code here in the platform and execute on that one? And for each models that I've just selected, I can actually enter the parameters, and I can do a lot of these fine tuning with the parameters as well. So for example, you see for each model, like example, random forest classifier, I can define the depth that I need to go down to. How do I do the binning? How many trees will be created or so? For Python, I can actually write in the code in Python, validate that code on the platform, and also execute on that one. So depending on what kind of a user you are, if you're a business analyst, you want to do automated machine learning. But if you are more skilled in data science, you want to actually pick and choose your model and do all of these other things. So as you could see, from a platform perspective, we let you search on your data. You can explore and put together dashboards. You can actually ask deeper questions like what's driving some kind of behavior. We can automatically surface a lot of insights for you. And finally, you can also create predictive models which can be consumed in various ways. The final thing that I just wanted to touch upon briefly was we let you bring in each and every kind of data set that you have in your environment. May it be in some relational data source, any cloud data source, big data sources like Hadoop, or some other systems you might have on-premise, SaaS application. It doesn't matter. We bring in each and every kind of data set that you might have, but also we let you connect them and create a single source of truth. For example, I think in one of these data models or business views, I actually have about 12 different data sets that are coming in, and I've actually created a different connection between them so that these kinds of tables are joined to each other. The other beauty of the platform is that we don't mandate you to move all of your data to our platform. We can actually connect to all of these data sets in a live mode, so that all of your work, whatever you have done in creating those data warehouses or data marts, stay where they are. We can just query live without bringing the data over. So we also have this lightweight ETL or data prep engine within our platform. So what it really means is, once you have uploaded all of the different kind of data sets, for example, I see that I have returns, orders, people, these things are coming from CSV. Some of the other things are coming from MySQL. Some of these things are coming from Hadoop, etc. But I can look at, what the data set really means. What's the data? What are the columns? What are the data for these columns? I can do a lot of different transformations, but even before I start with the transformations, I just want to see the profile of the data. So I just want to see what kind of subcategories do I have, and what's the shape and size of those categories. So I can see I have a lot of data on copiers, but I don't have a lot of data on paper. So I can see the count, etc. on these things. Let's say if I want to do some editing, for example, I want to take this particular product name column, and I can of course change the data type. I can change the column type from dimension to measure, but I'm interested in doing some transformations. I want to rename the column. I want to split the column based on a particular space or a hyphen. I want to find and replace things. So I can do these kind of operations, which are lightweight data prep operations on the platform itself. So what you would see is, just as a summary, what we've built is, you can bring in any different kind of data set. So let's say you have data in different relational sources, Hadoop sources, cloud sources, etc. You can bring them in. You can actually do some kind of data prep on these data sets once they are inside the system. You can connect them in live mode, which means you don't have to extract data out of your source systems or data warehouses. You can actually create a single business view on them, and then finally search using a very natural search interface. You can create dashboards to share with the team members, but you can also then use Genius Insights to discover hidden patterns in your data. You can ask deeper questions like, hey, what's driving my revenue, or why did my revenue change from one time period to the other time period? And finally, analysts can also create predictive models in a single click without writing any line of code. So it's a single platform which can cater to different kind of business users at the same time. So those are the things that I actually wanted to touch on today. Thanks for watching, and we'll have a detailed video on each module shortly. Have a good day.